Welcome to our prophecy update, dated November 24th, 2024, from beautiful Israel, Jerusalem, and as we've talked about, from the second hand, which is the Temple Mount. Behind me is the Wailing Wall. This temple, as we've said, Israel is God's prophetic flock. Israel is the hour hand. Jerusalem is the minute hand. And we are now at the second hand, which is the Temple Mount. This week, many things have happened this week. One of them is I've had the privilege, first of all, personally, to be here with Pastor Yaroslav and Nina and seeing all that God has done through Pastor Bobby and his family, and now through Pastor Yaroslav and Nina. It is a blessing to be able to be here, to see that God is continuing the work, and to see the souls that are responding to Jesus and to the gospel. Though Israel is right now in a war on 7 different fronts, I have to tell you, it is in many respects safer than most cities in America. If you go to Chicago, if you go to Houston, if you go to LA, you can't walk the streets at night. But in Israel, you can. And there are so many people. I wish I could show you all the videos I have through walking through Jerusalem, walking through and driving through Tel Aviv, walking on the streets of Bat Yam, where I'm staying at with Pastor Yaroslav, in the beaches. It's just the people have gotten accustomed to living in their new norm. They're living, they're working, they're enjoying life. And what we want to do is have them have a sense of urgency and knowing what's going to be coming, and for them to give their lives to Jesus Christ before Jacob's trouble. Jeremiah 37, before Daniel's 70th week, as it says in Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. We want them to be ready for the rapture, because hard times are coming, and right now they've accustomed to this new norm. They're able to acclimate. They're able to accommodate their lives accordingly. But they're not going to be able to in the Great Tribulation. And so we want to see them saved. And that's what we're working hard for. Israel is working hard in eliminating the terrorist threat from Gaza, from Hezbollah, even in Syria, in Judea and Samaria, what the world calls the West Bank. They're getting some internal, sometimes conflict, some Israeli Arabs that attack them. Okay, and then they have the problems in Yemen with the Houthis, and then they have the problems in Iraq they're having to deal with as well. And then obviously the biggest one is in Iran, where Iran, they know that Trump is going to be president and inaugurated come January 20th. So a lot of these terrorists of the world, bullies of the world, like Iran, like China, like Russia, like North Korea, they know that there's only a short period of time before they have to be able to listen to what Trump is saying. And so our world is in a very precarious, dangerous place in the meantime. Some of the things that have happened this past week is reports are in Iran that they have now have 5,000 additional new and advanced centrifuges that they activated at their nuclear facilities in response to the decision condemning Iran by the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Here, the agency that you need to stop your enrichment of your uranium and stop your nuclear ambition. And Iran did the exact opposite. And then you have Russia, China, North Korea, and globalists. As I said earlier, they know January 20th is coming. And so our world is becoming more dangerous on all of those fronts. America and Europe, they did something this past week. They committed to supplying Ukraine with missiles that can hit deep into Russia. A provocative move. And what does Russia do? What does Putin do? He showed international ICBM, International Continental Ballistic Missiles. He said these missiles can hit anywhere in Europe, and we can load them with nuclear weapons. All it takes is 3 missiles, he says, and the British civilization will collapse. He said that this past week in response to America and Europe supplying missiles that can hit deep into Russia. Putin then said, after he actually used one of these missiles and it hit Ukraine, he said, we successfully launched an ICBM hypersonic missile capable of carrying a nuclear weapon at a target in Ukraine, Dnipro, in response to the West's complicity in firing missiles at Russia. And the size of these missiles that Russia used, this is very bad. This is very big. And this is what they fired into Ukraine. And so now you have Putin saying, don't do any more because we can put a nuclear bomb onto one of these. He hasn't done that yet, but he's threatening. And then you have Turkey. Their Navy's anti-submarine warfare called the Corvette TCG F514 has been now operating off the Lebanese coast since 2 days ago. And Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, is now housing Hamas leadership after Qatar kicked them out. So he now has them in Turkey. This is good. Why is that? Because Turkey is a NATO nation. Turkey is supposed to be on the side of America and Europe, not the Soviet Union, or better yet, the old Soviet Union nations of Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, and also Russia. But that's what Erdogan is now doing. He saw that Qatar kicked out the Hamas leadership, said, we don't want this anymore. Qatar saw that Trump wasn't going to accept that. So they kicked him out. And what does Turkey do? Supposedly our NATO partner. He lets these Hamas leaders come into Turkey and now going to set up their headquarters there. And then I want to talk about some more anti-Semitism. The United Nations Security Council discussed a resolution that is calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The good news is America imposed a veto on that. Why? Because it proposed a resolution completely disregarding the hostages. So here the United Nations is saying, hey, Israel, stop the war in Gaza. Well, what about the hostages? Didn't even mention them at all. And then you have the International Criminal Court in The Hague. They issued arrest warrants this past week for Netanyahu and Gallant, the defense minister. They didn't mention anything about why this all happened on October 7th. The atrocities that happened, nothing. They just said, we want to arrest. And so now, Netanyahu and Gallant can't travel in those countries because they'll be arrested. What a travesty. What about what Hamas did? Anti-Semitism. And then you have the Netherlands. They were the first to respond to this. And they said, we will obey the decision and arrest Netanyahu and Gallant if they travel there. Netherlands, you're supposed to be Israel's friend. You're supposed to support them. And you're going to go by this order that is unacceptable, that is not right. And then you have the Israeli embassy yesterday. Muslims attacked the embassy in Jordan. The good news is Jordan fought them off. They had several soldiers that were hurt, but they fought them off. But it's getting very tense in many parts of the world. And then you have Australia. They just finished denying the entrance of the former Israeli minister into Australia. What's happening here? And then you have Canada. You have pro-Palestinian protesters rioting, protesting on the streets, breaking things in Montreal, Canada. And what does Trudeau do? Does he arrest them? We didn't see hardly any arrests. They're not stopping this. And then you have in the United States, the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, announced he would break U.S. law and arrest Netanyahu if he set foot in Dearborn, Michigan. What? Anti-Semitism happening everywhere. And unfortunately, then you have our own administration. When Israel right now is fighting this war on 7 fronts, the Biden administration this past week is currently withholding an order for 20,000 heavy Mk-84 bombs from Israel at this time that they critically need these weapons. What is happening? I'll tell you what's happening. Zechariah chapter 12, when the Bible says the world will come against Israel. Here's the good news. Americans voted in a man that happens to be the most pro-Israel president America has ever had. And when he becomes president, January 20th, if by God's grace that does happen, he is going to give Israel the green light to take care of these terrorist threats, stop them in Gaza, Hamas, stop them in Lebanon, Hezbollah, stop them in Syria, stop them in any part of the world such as Iraq, Yemen, and Iran. He's going to give them the green light to do that. And he's also going to give them the arms that they need. So that's a good thing. But here's the bad thing. The Bible says in Zechariah, there's coming a time when the whole world, nobody will support them. Nobody, including the United States. I don't know how that's going to happen. I don't know when that's going to happen. It could be after the rapture. It could be that if the rapture happened today, in 6 months, whenever, then America, the biggest supporter of Israel, will implode. And then we won't be supporting Israel because the only ones who will be left behind are those who didn't go by what the Bible says. Didn't go by Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 to 3. Didn't go by supporting them. And God says, if you support Israel, if you bless Israel, I will bless you. But if you curse Israel, I will curse you. And that's what is happening to much of the world. That's what's going to happen to the rest of the world, including the United States, when we don't support Israel. But here's also the good news. God will support Israel. God says, they are the apple of my eye. And he neither slumbers nor sleeps, but he will be taking care of them and helping them. But it's going to be during Jacob's trouble, during the 70th week of Daniel. And so that's why we're here. That's why I'm here in Israel, helping Pastor Yaroslav and his family and our church there and all that Pastor Bobby and his family did, and trying to see many Jews saved before the 70th week of Daniel. Because the Bible says it's going to be very difficult. Worse than any other time, the Bible says in Matthew 24, 21 through 22. Worse than any other time. So that's why we want to see Jews saved, Israelis saved, raptured before this time. That's why I ask you all, be praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Be praying for Jews to be saved in Israel. Be praying for Pastor Yaroslav and his wife Nina and son Mark and the family and the church that's here. Be praying for many to be saved. And that's why those of you who are watching on this video, listen to me. The news that I gave you right now, crazy. But that's only part of it. There's so many other things that are happening that shows us Jesus is about to come back. Are you ready? Luke chapter 21, verse 28 says, when you begin to see all of these things, look up, for your redemption draws near. Jesus is about to come back. We got to be not having our roots deep in this world. Our citizenship isn't America. It's heaven. It's being with Jesus. And we need to be excited about him coming back and have an urgency to live right and an urgency to evangelize while there's still time. God bless you, and Maranatha.